Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a lovely Monday afternoon here in suburban Chicago. We seem to have turned a corner and we're definitely in late spring or early summer. The temperature is that perfect mid-70s, which is exactly the temperature I like the most. I'm outside in a t-shirt and pants, and I feel just fine. I hope that you are having a lovely April. I'm sure we'll get some cold days before the end of April. We often get a few more crummy days, but for the most part, the days tend to be pretty nice. I will say pretty nice. Well, I had a lovely weekend. My in-laws visited and we played a lot of games, which was just dandy. And I'm going to share a few with you because I got to try a couple new games that I hadn't played before, which means it's time for a shooting from the hip triple shot. That's right, shooting from the hip triple shot. Anyone new to the podcast, I think I did one of these 2 episodes ago, so you'd have to be just joining us. Nonetheless, Shooting from the Hip Triple Shot is a short review episode in which I give you first impressions of a couple games I'm trying for the first time. Now, those of you who've been listening for a while will recognize some of these titles as games I've been trying to get played on my top of the stack. However, they are not this month's top of the stack games, so it's like I'm doing something late but not giving myself credit for it. Oh boy. Anyway, the 3 games that we're playing. I think I'm going to go in backwards order, starting with the one I played most recently and working backwards, in part because I have the most to say about the last one. So to start with, I played the Todd Sanders game from Ludi Creations, They Who Were 8. Now, I've been interested in this game for a while. For some reason, I think the title is great. I really like the title. The box design is lovely. Todd Sanders has an excellent graphic design sensibility that suits me really well. And the games where he made all the art, I enjoy quite a bit. I have a print and play version of a game he made about going on a hero's quest. And then there's this game, They Who Are 8. This game's a little hard to describe. It fits, it's a short game, definitely in the filler range, 15 to 20 minutes to play. And it functions a little bit like Between Two Cities, if you're familiar with that game. This is a competitive game in which you are working with your neighbors to try and make the strongest pair of gods. So there are these god cards. Each one has a power that can be used once in the game. And the way the game works, each person is dealt 2 gods, and you set them on either side of you. You sit, around a table, and your opponents set gods on each side of them. So you have the situation where there are 2 gods between each player. Then when you play, each of those pairs of gods between the players are considered a pair. They're considered to be working together. And at the end of the game, the first thing you do is you look at each pair of gods. Whichever pair of gods has the best score, has the most glory, is the dominant pair. This is the pair that will be considered for the victory. But then, however, within the dominant pair, the one of the gods who is the most selfless, in other words, the god who has the least glory in the dominant pair, that the player who has that god is the winner. So you have this interesting back and forth where you're trying to get the people to your right and your left, you're trying to get their gods as high as you can, or just a little bit higher than your gods, so that one of your pairs wins, but you want your god to be the lower of the 2. It's a really interesting dynamic, difficult to suss out, and the game plays very quickly. You have cards that you play that allow you to put glory on and put shame, or I don't remember what the negative tokens are, but you have a positive one and a negative one, and you're sort of manipulating the values. It's an interesting mechanism. I played it with my wife and my mother-in-law, both of whom play a lot of games, and they both did not like it at all. If I get to play this game again, it will be with people who don't live in my house. The cognitive shift needed to figure out the win condition just did not work for them. I had a similar experience with a game a few years ago, another small publisher game. This one produced by Charles Ward. I forget what his game company is called, but it was called Blood and Fortune. This one is also a sort of small footprint card game that involved kind of manipulating different piles of cards and points and trying to win. My wife did not like that one either. So there's an interesting niche for games involving this sort of tug of war mechanism that just doesn't fit with my family's gaming style. So anyway, that was They Who Were Eight. The graphic design on this game is beautiful though. Todd Sanders produced these lovely cards that have a kind of hazy look to them with very sharp lines. It's hard to explain what it looks like, but if you get a chance to go look at photos of They Who Were Eight, the design, the game looks really nice, and I enjoyed the experience of it. I'm not sure how much I'll get to play it, but it was a fun experience. I also got it on pretty deep discount from Miniature Market, so I'm not out a lot of money for the fact that I don't know that I'll get to play it again. We'll see. Anyway, that's They Who Were Eight by Todd Sanders from Looted Creations. All right, the second game that I wanted to mention today is the Science and Séance Society by Daniel Newman, published by New Mill Industries. I got this game in Kickstarter. This is another game with a very clean look and design. It's all graphic design. There's almost no art. I mean, there is this one sort of big, elaborate, I don't know what you'd call it, occult drawing, I guess an occult symbol of some sort that is on the front of the box and on some of the cards. That would be the most artistic thing in the game. Otherwise, really, it's all graphic design, and it looks nice. It's very functional, tight and clean would be the description. Minimalist, but it's very coherent. It looks good. It doesn't have quite the pop that They Who Were Eight did, but the gameplay is much better, I think. In this game, it is an asymmetrical game. The premise is that you're investigating some sort of mysterious phenomenon, and one player is a scientist trying to learn about it scientifically. The other player is an occultist trying to learn about it occultistically. It's a really neat give and take. One player is playing a dice manipulation game. You have these 5 cards with varying depictions of dice on them, and you have a bag full of red, white, and black dice. And you're pulling them out and rolling them, and you're trying to get them into the right situation where you fit them on your cards. And once you get all 15 dice, 3 dice on each card, 5 cards, once you achieve that, you win. But in between your turns, your opponent is holding a seance, and they are doing so they have tarot-sized cards, which is fitting, and they are manipulating their card pool to try and manipulate their cards into a certain arrangement. They're trying to get them in A through E, or 1 through 5, depending on which the science player, picked for them to do. And they are manipulating the cards by drawing cards and discarding cards, and you can interfere with each other because they can use their cards to remove dice from incomplete cards or from their own seance cards. And you, as the science player, can put dice on either on your cards or on their cards. When you put dice on their cards can't activate their powers. It's a sort of competitive asymmetrical puzzle game that is nicely thinky, nicely short. It's about 20 minutes to play, 15 to 20 minutes, and that was on a learning game. I would imagine this game takes 10 once you know what you're doing. And it is a nice little game. I definitely could see it being something that stays in our collection, and we play it a fair amount if my wife takes to it. I don't know if she will. My mother-in-law liked it just fine. So that's Science and Séance Society from Daniel Newman and New Mill Industries. Or New Mill Games. I'm not sure which. One of the two. All right, so the third game that I want to talk about today is one that I've been trying to get played since Christmas. I really have been looking forward to playing it. I love the art and design on the game. I just haven't gotten a chance to try it yet. And this is the Harry Potter House Cup Competition, designed by Nate Heiss and Cami Mandel from the Op. Cami Mandel is somebody I notice who hangs out in the forums, so she definitely is engaged with the idea of this game. Harry Potter House Cup Competition is a worker placement game of a pretty standard variety. You have 3 workers, you place them, you get the results of the space that you went, And then at the end of the round, you pull them all back and go again. There are a couple big differences that make the game work really well. First, every turn you play one of your workers, and then you get to learn a spell, or you get to learn a lesson. And the lessons give you more resources, and they give you more power. So it becomes this kind of building engine as you play your workers to get stuff, which allows you to learn lessons, which amplifies the stuff you're learning. And then there's basic lessons and advanced lessons. So as you go along, you want to learn more advanced lessons because they'll amplify you more. Each of your workers has 3 levels of skill that they get to do. So there's a lot of management of different things and tight management of resources in order to meet the requirement of particular lessons. And then after each round, when everyone's placed all their workers, there's a challenge round where each player is allowed to accomplish either 2 easy challenges or 1 easy challenge and 1 difficult challenge. Of course, you have to have the students to be able to do that, which means you've had to manage what levels your students are at in the 3 different skills. But then you also have to have taken the challenges themselves. And this is the part of the game that was a bit of a disconnect for us at first, because I've played a number of games recently that use open markets for purchasing, like Everdell or Via Nebula, where you have contracts or cards that you can buy straight out of the market when you use them. So like in Everdell, if you want to build a building, you can either build one out of your hand or build one straight out of the market. Of course, if you just build it out of the market, you never take it in hand. You always risk someone else building it first. But that's how it is. So when I read the rules in the Harry Potter game, because it never says, the rule book actually doesn't say play a card out of hand, I assumed the markets were open. But once I got the game out on the table and we started playing it, I realized there are too many spaces that allow you to take lessons and challenges if you're supposed to be able to play them from the market. It's just too common an activity. So I'm pretty sure that you have to play them out of hand. It's possible that I'm wrong. I think I posted in the Board Game Geek Guild about it. If not, I need to. But I'm pretty sure I've interpreted the rule correctly. So, like I said, it's a pretty standard worker placement game in terms of what you're doing. The places where it really succeeds and frankly beats is really interesting is that 1, each of your workers has their own set of skill levels, which you have to constantly monitor. 2, the resources that you need to do all those things are relatively difficult to get, so you're constantly sort of having to pay attention to how much of the resources that you have available. But they also offer enough leeway that you can, like one of the things is you have to have a certain number of levels in these skills. Well, if you have magic tokens, you can always expend a magic token for each level you're missing. So you can kind of fudge your way into the harder challenges if you need to. The look of the game is great. It has a nice, clean design in the style of the Harry Potter games from the OP. In particular, the board itself is pretty readable. The tokens that you have are little portraits of the characters from the movies, which is fine. That's not that great. And I think the game, if it came with little miniatures, would be a nice add-on, but I don't know that I would want to pay another $20 for the game, which is probably what you'd need to do if it came with miniatures. The pace of the game is pretty good. On a first play, it did take upwards of 2 hours, which is a little bit long for a worker placement game, but at the same time, it is a full-on worker placement game, and it was our first play, and we played with 4 people. So I would imagine this is a 90-minute game once everybody knows what they're doing, but on a first play, it took us more than 2 hours. The highlight of the game in terms of components is in the rulebook they call them hourglass tokens, or hourglasses, which is a mistake because they're not hourglass shaped. But the game comes with 4 long tubes that look like test tubes and a whole bunch of little gems decorated in the different colors of the Hogwarts houses. And whenever you score points, they're always scoring points in increments of 10, which I don't know why they did that. Why not just say a point? Why do you say 10 points? But then you put the gems in your tube, and so over the course of the game, when you're keeping score, you're adding these gems to the tubes, and it's reminiscent of the large hourglasses that are part of the Harry Potter movies, where you have these big tubes full of gems that the houses are scoring. So that part is pretty fun. I also like the theme written on all the different cards. When you're doing the challenges and you're doing the spells, the names of the names of the things you're doing are very evocative. And so it's easy to say, like, I send Hermione over here and she learns how to defeat a troll, and that gets her these things, and then she takes potions class and goes up one level in potions or whatever. So that part all works great. I would say the one other big critique I have, and this was a big critique for me, it was a real problem, is that the icon for potions, which is one of the skills, and the icon for defense against the dark arts, which is another skill, had a graphical similarity that was too close. They're both solid, dark colored shapes. The shield is kind of curved on the top and comes to a point on the bottom. The potions one looks like a cauldron, so it's curved on the top in the other direction a little bit, rounded on the sides the same way the shield is, but it's round on the bottom instead of pointed. Okay, fine. However, on some of the cards where it requires that you have a certain amount, there's an icon for sort of requiring that level, and that icon covers the bottom of the icon for the class. So one of the major distinctive feature in difference between the potion and the shield, or the potion and the defense of dark arts thing, especially at a distance, is the pointy bottom of the icon, and that is covered up on many of the cards where you see it. Now, 2 of the 4 of us at the table had consistent problems telling the difference between the two, and I had at least 2 or 3 turns that were ruined because I went somewhere thinking I needed one thing, and it turned out I needed another. Now, I will say, I've recently learned I need glasses. I'm waiting for them to come in. So this is partly a problem of my vision is not acute enough. But the problem is not insignificant in that there were 2 of us who had this problem. And then my daughter also, who was kind of teasing me for not seeing the difference, also had at least one turn where she went somewhere and then realized she had used the wrong icon. That's frustrating because the graphic design on the icons could have been distinctly different. They could have gone with like a flask for the potion instead of a cauldron, and that would have had a big graphical difference. They also could have made, if they went with a flask and made the flask clear, so it's hollow, that would have looked dramatically different than the other 2 shapes, and nobody would have made mistakes who could see it at all. So that part was honestly pretty frustrating. The rest of the game I really enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to playing it more. My daughter did put it on our 10 for 10 list, so I'm committed to 9 more plays at least. I will also say the rulebook needs a fair amount of work. It's difficult to find things when you're looking for them in the rulebook. It's not well organized, and there are a couple crucial rules that are either poorly explained or not explained at all. As I've mentioned, this issue of whether you need to have a card in hand or not, as far as I can find, is never addressed in the rulebook. It's assumed that you will play out of hand, I'm pretty sure, but it never actually says that. The closest it gets is saying you need challenges in hand in order to participate in the challenge, but it doesn't say you need to be holding those challenges to do them. There it is. So what have you been playing lately? Have you had a chance to try out any awesome new games? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. I'd love to hear from you about what you've been playing. My username on Board Game Geek is Wombat929. Drop me a line there and let me know what's new with you. Thanks for joining me tonight, or this afternoon. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.